Welcome to Big in Biz with DiViz. I'm Craig DiVizzio. My guest today was Patrick Coyne. If you have been struggling with interviews, fighting interviews, unsuccessful in interviews, and really needing to make a transition to change yourself in your career, you need to listen today. Patrick was in the same situation and gave lots of tips on how he made his transition. Stay tuned. Good morning and welcome to Big in Biz with DiViz. I'm Craig DiVizzio, president of DiVizzio International, and my guest today is Patrick Coyne. He's currently a lead project controls analyst at Southern Company. When I first met Patrick, and this was probably, I guess, about 5 years ago, as he came into my interviewing skills class, and I've taught interviewing for years and years, so I've had thousands of people go through that class. I would dare say that Patrick was the most frustrated person with the interview process that I've had in all of those years. The cool part about this story is he turned all of that around. Okay, not only has he been successful in interviews, he also made a major transformation in his life, and I can't wait to ask him about how he made those transformations, not only in interviewing, but also in his career. But let me tell you a little bit about Patrick and his background. Patrick has 20 years of experience in finance and planning analysis, data analytics, cost engineering, and project management. His expertise is from the following industries: telecommunications, Department of Defense, commercial, automotive, and utility industries. He's actively involved in the Association for the Advancement of Cost Engineering and the Project Management Institute. Patrick has lead cost analyst teams reporting on up to $2 billion in annual spend. That's a lot of money. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great.
You know, I mentioned in the intro that when you came into the class, when we met about 5 years ago, you were in a very different place than you are now. And I'm pretty sure that the place you were in, others are also frustrated with the interview process, not understanding how it works, not understanding exactly how to be successful with it. So I want to talk about that today and how you made the mental shift and the changes and that type of thing. But could you start by telling us the lead up to that? Before we met in my interviewing class, you were in the construction end. Tell me a little bit about that part of your life and what led up to getting so frustrated with the interview process. Because I think at that point you had been unsuccessful in 6 or 7 interviews in a row, or maybe even more.
Yeah, it was a couple. So what led up to this transformation and a successful interview? I did get the job, so that was great. But I'll talk about a little bit of the lead up. I was in a cost analyst role, and in the role for a couple years, built a great expertise, great relationships, and I was that person that was told, you'll have this role, you'll have the manager role. So I was really, kind of trending towards that and making sure, throughout the years leading up to that, I was getting feedback and making sure, keeping track and, improving where necessary. And eventually, so my manager retired, and lo and behold, I didn't get the job, and actually they didn't even have interviews for that position. They just kind of filled it with someone else, and so that was kind of a blow a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure a slap in the face that they had promised you something that they never then gave you on the back end.
Right, and what an additional thing that was frustrating was, there was no interview process, so I didn't get that chance to, prove myself. And so after that process, I was talking to my manager, and just trying to get some feedback of, okay, what could I have done to, to get the manager job, right? And that person, my manager at that time, didn't give me any feedback and just said, you didn't check a box and you're up next. So I said, well, the next time it's just going to be the same thing, and I need some feedback. There has to be something that you can give me. But anyway, so at that point, I decided to start interviewing, looking elsewhere, and that's what led to these multiple interviews.
And so at that point, you were interviewing in several different companies. And did you find that the interview process, as you were moving forward, was substantially different than the interviews you had had prior to that? Or was it that you had no interview experience because the company you were in just selected people to be in positions? And so was that your inception, your learning about interviews?
It really was. So I have been in the role for many years. And during those many years, I didn't interview because as I said, I was, the next person up. So I hadn't interviewed for a long, long time. And then, so at that point, when I decided to start interviewing again, I went out of the company and in the company as well. And there was a little bit of difference. Sometimes I was interviewing for more, construction field positions, which were not in a corporate environment. And some of those positions were in a corporate environment.
Well, talk a little bit about those types of interviews. What was there one or two things that really tripped you up, that you struggled with, or that you didn't understand, or was it just the fact that you were rusty because you hadn't interviewed in a while?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that the difference between the two interview types.
Okay, great.
I interviewed in the field and corporate settings. So in the field, I found that the interviews were typically one-on-one, maybe one-on-two, and they were more conversational, not as structured. And you may even go for lunch after after the interview as well.
Right.
So compare that to a more corporate office type interview environment, whereas where that's more panel interviews where you have multiple people. It's more structured. So question 1, question 2, question 3. And those questions may not even be interrelated. They may be 3 totally separate questions, and less conversational. It seems like you want to address this question 1. You want to address question 2, question 3, and like I said, they may be somewhat related, maybe not.
So it sounds like it was a completely different process. And it was really the fact that you were accustomed to kind of just sitting down and having a conversation with somebody, real casual, personal, and then it got fairly formal. And the format.
Yeah, that's right.
And the format.
That's right. And yeah, and like you said, a little rustiness. I hadn't, interviewed in so long that just that kind of practice I really needed.
So then when you got into the class and we explained the process of it, did everything kind of click at that time, or were there still some things? What was the biggest work that you had to do to move from, I'm accustomed to a conversational style, and now they've got this really formal style? After the class, what work did you do? What was your process like? Take us through that, because I'm sure there are other people who are wanting to make this transition, and they're saying, man, tell me what you did. Tell me how you got from this conversational style to really being good at this formal answering every question and going where they want to go, which is very different for you now.
Yeah, probably, as I look back, the real difference was the shift in my mental attitude. And when I went to your, that first class I went with, the interview skills, I was like hitting a wall. It was like, oh, interviewing. I'm just frustrated. And you said something that really struck with me. It was, you may not have got the job because of the right timing, the right fit. And as I looked back on some of the interviews, I think my focus was to leave the current department I was in rather than finding the right job. So I look back now, and some of the interviews I went on, I'm glad I didn't get them actually, because truthfully, it wouldn't have been a right fit. So that was something good that you said that kind of shifted my mindset. Another thing is we talked about that introduction, that first, it's kind of a boom, first get to know you. First impressions mean everything, right? So I emailed you back and forth a lot to get that first initial, introduction kind of statement. So that helps.
Yeah, and even beyond, was that the beginning when you started understanding the interview process, the new process, the more formalized process? And then it wasn't too long after that till you became successful in an interview. It was only one or two interviews after that. Was that not correct?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, it wasn't long after that, and I went into interviews more prepared, better focused. I think more prepared because I had those key the introduction and conclusion definitely. Then in between, the body in between, kind of writing out those key points for any questions, kind of relate that story, those key points with the story to,
How much would you estimate in terms of hours of preparation after having gone through the class to get prepared and make this major shift to where you're now successful in your interview? About how many hours have you put in? Because I know that when I talk about preparation for interviews, the majority of people really kind of take a step back and they go, really, does it take all that long? Well, you tell us your story, because you had all the motivation in the world. You were really frustrated. You hadn't been successful in a long time, and it seemed like the class maybe had been just right for you. It turned on a light bulb. So now you're motivated. How did you turn that into preparation, and what did that look like?
Yeah, that's great. You did say, I remember being in the interview class, and you said it's going to take a long time. You said a minute number. I can't recall that right now, but when I first heard that, I was like, whoa, that's crazy, But it's true. It's true. I can't recall how many. It was a couple, 2 or 3 interviews after that class where I got the job, and that was a couple months maybe. And I'll tell you that the introduction and conclusion, my statements, I try to do that once a day throughout the week.
Okay.
Yeah, just to keep it in mind, and kind of look at. Really, it was an everyday process because I was so laser focused on I want a transition. So I had that motivation to learn those key points, learn that introduction. So going in, I wasn't so nervous that I forgot everything.
Right. Well, you hit on a couple of really key things there that I want to share with the listeners, and that is that the introduction is the most important answer, and you clearly communicated you spent a lot of time on that. And then the closing statement at the end of the interview when they say, do you have anything else you'd like to say? you're telling me you focused a lot on that, and of course I introduced that as the second most important answer. So it sounds like you spent the time appropriately, and I really like the strategy that you just shared with the listeners, and that is you picked away at it every day. This wasn't something that you waited until right before the interview and then tried to, kind of like a college student, cram overnight to get everything in, but you said, I'm interviewing for this job, and now let me spend a little bit of time every single day rehearsing my answers, which is a way better strategy in terms of really learning and remembering the answers than if you were to try to do it all in one shot, 1 or 2 days before the interview.
Yeah, definitely. Before the interviewing skills class, I was the guy who was cramming and going into the interview and forgetting everything.
Yeah, so you changed your whole interview style from the class.
That's right. Yeah, and the introduction and conclusion are good to practice every day, just normally too, because it's good for like an elevator speech, just meeting, not even interviewing, just meeting someone, and the introduction and conclusion are going to be in every interview.
Right, right. Yeah, I like that approach to it, to carry it around with you and have it ready when you need it, because in business you never know how the next person you meet might be able to help you in your career at some point in time. So if you happen to meet somebody in a hallway or an elevator and you just say, hey, how are you doing? What do you do? To have that ready to be able to sell yourself in terms of what you're doing and where you want to go, you never know how that person might be able to help you. So to have that on hand is a great strategy. Great strategy. Was getting the job that you have now, was that the turning point? Because I know that I asked you to do a short video for me to use for my marketing purposes. And to be honest with you, Patrick, when I saw the video, had I not known that it came from you, I wouldn't have known it was you. You have made a life transformation. Tell me, did it all start with you getting in a job that you were better suited for? Did it, tell me how that whole thing started, because you made a fabulous transformation of your whole life, not only just your career. Talk a little bit about that and kind of how that started.
Yeah. So, I've been in a career where, I thought I was going on to a management position, but it didn't work out, and then had multiple interviews, and I felt like I was hitting a wall or a ceiling where I currently was, and then I was doing all these interviews, getting nothing there. So it was just both sides just coming in, and it just a lot of frustration and disappointment, heartache, and all the things that go with that. Just not being positive, really because of that. More so, I've always tried to be a positive person, but it's tough when you get in circumstances like that. So I went through, I got the job, and I went to an awesome group, and got really hooked up with a great group. They were really positive groups, so that kind of helped change my perspective too. So becoming more positive just because of that change. We're going in my new position at we're transitioning to a new accounting system, and I'm an integral part with that. My new manager asked me to help out, and so that was good to have that, being a part of that transition as well, and really just feeling a sense of belongingness of the group, and getting feedback. My prior manager said, "Oh yeah, you're doing good." My new manager, sometimes says, "Okay," kind of veers me in a straight path sometimes, if gives me that good feedback. So as a leader, too, that's been a lesson for me as well to say, okay, when as I am leading teams, and as I make my next steps throughout my career, uh, you know, providing honest feedback to your team members is important.
Yeah, I teach a class on performance feedback, and so many managers really resist that whole process because they see it as I'm delivering information that's going to be difficult for people to hear. What, of course, they don't realize is you certainly have an opportunity to deliver feedback that people do want to hear. Not only appreciative feedback of things people are doing well, but also the guidance that people need in their careers to stay on track. And it sounds like you finally started getting that, and that was, it appears to me, welcomed by you, and that then affected not just your career but other aspects of your life, and maybe you're thinking just about where you are in your life and other things that you wanted to change. Seems like you got some energy from that. Am I correct there?
Oh yeah, 100%, definitely. Even after I got that job, the first month or two, I remember maybe even a couple weeks, maybe in a week or so. My wife was like, "Oh man, this is great. The old Pat's back, and you know you got your groove back."
So if you were to give people who were in positions like you, maybe in the wrong job, in a job that they don't feel like they're a good fit for, and it is affecting their attitude on it. Would you say it was affecting your attitude on a daily basis?
Yes, yeah,
And
definitely.
because of that affecting other parts of your life, what would you suggest for them? Because breaking out of that is not the easiest thing, and obviously you've done a great job breaking out of it. But now, if you're talking to some of those people who were saying, "Yeah, Craig, you're talking about me. I'm frustrated in my job. I'm not getting feedback. I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied. It is affecting the rest of my life." What would be your suggestion for them?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, the main thing is, well, there's a couple things. So as you go through the interview process, do remain positive, because you bring that negative energy into any interviews. I look back and the interviews that I did have prior to your interview class. I I look back and I knew I was bringing that negative energy, and I probably, when I walked in the door, I didn't I didn't get the job because of that. So remain positive, practice, practice, practice. Like I said, every day I would do my introduction and conclusion, come up with a good introduction and good conclusion, because those are applicable to really anything that you interviewed for. You can carry those where whatever kind of position that you're interviewing for.
Yeah, I love your point, Patrick, about the attitude that you bring into the interview. I don't think a lot of people focus on their answers. I just want to have great answers. And what I love to share with people is it's not just about your answers. It's about they're hiring you as a person. They're bringing you into their family. Now, this person's got slick answers, but what about their attitude? Is this the kind of person that we want to work around? Is this the kind of person we want to hang out during break time with? Do we want to go to lunch with this kind of person? Do they have a positive attitude so that as we interact with them, we're going to absorb some of that and springboard off of that? Or are they going to bring us down with the attitude that they brought into this job from everything else that's happened to them before?
Yeah, that's right. And practice, practice, practice. Reach out to some friends, or any mentors that you have, and do some practice runs as well. That's always people that you trust that can give you that feedback.
So,
That's
so, so
important.
you did, so you did some preparation interviews before the real interview.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people that are that you can trust, that will give you that feedback, not just say, "Oh, you did a good job." give you feedback to tweak a little bit here and there.
Yeah, I like that because I like the way you position that. This has got to be people who know you well and will give you honest feedback, not just say, you're great if you're not, and also not be so critical of you, overly critical, maybe because of something that's going on with them. So somebody that you can really trust to give you honest feedback that is only designed to help you do well in your next interview.
That's right.
If you had one piece of advice beyond that to give our listeners who are struggling with interviews, maybe one thing that you learned about interviewing that has made a big difference going forward, what would that be?
Yeah, so I always get nervous right before interviews, and I've found that writing down some keynotes, some key stories. Just don't write the whole story out. Just some key words that if you get lost in your train of thought, look down at your notes and say, oh, okay, this story I can tell just maybe one or two words, and expound on that. And another thing, you said one thing.
That's all right. That's okay.
It comes down to selling yourself too, and as more of an introvert, I'm not a good salesman, but you have to realize that you are selling yourself.
Yeah, selling yourself is the number one comment to interviewees who are not successful. They typically get the feedback you didn't sell yourself to. So you make a great point to all the listeners who really struggle with that. Find a way to tell stories about yourself where you do a good job of selling yourself. Patrick, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I know our time slipped by pretty quickly, but I just want to thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great.
All right, folks, that's it for another edition of Big in Biz with DiViz. I'm Craig DiVizzio. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay cool, have good thoughts. See ya.